All right, what webinar are we on?
20.
20. Ooh.
All right, we are now streaming live. Welcome, everybody.
Hello. It's probably going to be a light crowd because a reminder wasn't sent out, but that's okay.
Oh, it wasn't sent. And also, just to sort of announce, we are cutting back on the frequency of the webinars. We should probably be doing these every other month, I believe, unless we have something special.
Yeah, they're gonna kind of correspond with the newsletters because this way we don't have to come up with 3 topics all the time.
It's hard for us to be that creative on a month-by-month basis.
Yeah.
Good evening, Joe Verdict from Belgium. It's evening for you. It's morning for us still out here. Welcome to the webinar. He's joined us on YouTube. So we got a few names here. Hey Norbert, good to see you joining us. Sorry we couldn't see you at Amherst at the beginning of or at the end of the January.
All right, what are we going to start with?
I don't know.
We start with a dealer. Yeah, let's start with a dealer profile, not profile, not interview, just a highlight, a dealer highlight. Being we were just on the East Coast, we usually have dealers out there at the Amherst Railway Society train show. Let's see. So unfortunately, I had a little snow this year, but here we got a picture. Let me share my screen here. We got a picture. Here's a picture of Robert Frauenfeld. Frauenfeld is a nice dealer. He's a good guy. This was from 2017, I believe. And lately, the pandemic has kind of put him in a bad mood.
It's taking its toll on.
It's taking its toll on him. So you really need to order something from Robert Frauenfeld because now he's a little grumpy and cranky, and all he does is roar a lot. So here's a picture, Frauenfeld and us this year at Amherst. So you know what, order something from Robert because it'll put him in a better mood, and you know what, it just might get him back to the Robert that we're used to. So that's all we have on that. So there you go, Robert. Gave you a little plug. Hope you enjoy it. I know several of your customers will send you emails, send pictures. So yeah, can't wait to hear from you.
Sure, they'll be asking about your skin condition.
Yes, so. Yes. Send them a bottle of Jergens or something.
Some kind of lotion for that cold weather.
You just need to get them back to normal.
All right. So let's see. What are our topics today?
Our topics are going to align with the newsletter, and I guess maybe I should pull up the newsletter. That probably would have been something to be ready for there. But my topic was I did an advanced digital upgrade to an 18.4 locomotive. If anybody is interested, and you can see it in the newsletter, but if anybody has any questions, you can certainly ask them now about our newsletter. It doesn't have to just be on the locomotive, the article I did. It can be on Curtis's article on the CS2, and because we haven't visited the CS2 in quite a while, there have been some changes since the last time we did it, but not a whole lot. From what we hear, the CS2 is getting pretty well full internally, so to say, software wise, and we don't have any information on when that's going to be discontinued or anything like that. They don't give us that information. But right now, as of this webinar right now, it is still supported. We don't know if or when there'll be another update on it, but it's about all we have. So
Yeah, I think the latest software version on that is 4.2.13,
yeah,
parentheses
14.
14.
Yes.
So I don't how many let's see. Do we want to do a Q&A here? Is there a polling? I thought we had a polling thing. We might want to see if anybody here still sort of using a CS2.
Show of hands, I guess. You can raise your hand.
Two people have their hands raised. So yeah, so there are a couple people out there. I guess what do you want me to kind of go over that quickly?
Yeah, well, I don't know about you, Curtis, but I finally packed away my CS2 because I just wasn't using it. I probably packed it away about 6 months ago. I just know we weren't getting the questions and I wasn't, using it very often. But up until about 6 months ago, it was on my test layout here every day, just being used in one way or another. And then I just all of a sudden stopped using it. So, yeah, I packed it away and I can put it back on the layout whenever I want. So
Yeah, I basically have mine in a shipping container, or not a shipping container, but a container that I can stack it and pull it out when there's questions. Um, but let's kind of go over a little bit here. And unfortunately, so one of the I guess disappointing changes. And by the way, we have our viewer in on YouTube also has a CS2. So one of the disappointing changes, I guess, that kind of took away from the CS2 over the CS3 is now we don't really have a way to sort of view as we do on the CS3 live. So for instance, I'll just share, I can activate the CS3 right here through my screen, and I have control of everything. I can basically manipulate it. It used to be able to do that with the CS2, and using the real VNC viewer, but now it won't communicate, and we can only kind of do screenshots. So it's sort of detrimental to being able to show certain changes on the on the monitor in the webinar. So you'll have to bear with me, because then we just have to take screenshots, and I kind of have to lean over here where the central station 2 is to show you any kind of screenshots.
you're still sharing this.
Yeah, so now I'm going to go back to this. So this is generally, you put in the IP number if you connect your CS2 to your network, and you can put in your IP number, and this is basically the screen that you receive. And part of the article was how they've sort of kept the CS2 sort of kind of relative to all the new changes with the Marklin lineup, and that includes compatibility with MFX devices. So you just basically, we can only view screenshots, and there you go. There's your main controller. One of the things that I noted was that the Central Station 2 originally only had sort of the 16 functions based on the left and right hand screen here, which obviously you can't see. Let me see if I can. I'm going to change out locomotives, and let's see if I got something that's got a little bit more current or more functions. Yeah, I guess a 53 might work. Huh? Oh, let's use this one. Yeah, so again, this is difficult to do, because now I got to refresh the page. Yeah,
It has been a while since you've used your CS2, hasn't it?
yeah, and then then I have to reload a screenshot, and there you go. So now you actually have your 16 functions. And what they've done here is, a couple icons. We'll kind of point those out. When you have more than 15 functions, or the 16, because it's sort of zero base, so it's even though there's 16 displayed, you start from 0. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. You actually have these function count buttons down here on the corners. And you can see over in the lower right corner, it says 0 to 15. And then on the left, if there's additional functions, it will be listed as F16 to 31. And I will change it on the screen. And actually, this loc that's displayed on the right doesn't actually have any functions, so they wouldn't display anything anyways. The other thing that they've kind of done, and it's probably already there in existence, is if you click on this icon here, it actually displays the I keep clicking on the screen and you can't.
Doesn't work, does it?
Yeah. It's going to be this absent-minded moment, folks, every time I hit the screen, because I'm used to doing it on the CS3. Refresh the page. Come on. I just don't want to translate. You don't have to keep asking me these questions. Never. Okay, there you go. And we do a reload. And come on, let's see if it works.
Hit it again.
And let's do a refresh one more time. Screenshot. Oh, so that's interesting. So there's a bug right there, folks. The basically when you click that icon, you get a World of Operations screen, which basically shows your cab view, and apparently it will not display on the software. So once again, we hit another snag that the software just doesn't want to connect. Or actually,
it may not show that screen. It
well,
may
actually,
not do a screenshot of that.
It's not going back to the screenshot now.
There you go.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So yeah, I can't really show that screenshot. The other sort of, and let's kind of move on from that because there's really not a whole lot we can do with it. One of the other changes that you may notice, so I guess we can to some degree think about this as an ideal way to look at why you might benefit from going to CS3. So the first thing we'll look at is we'll look quickly at your keyboard tabs. So in the CS2, you always have these pages. I mean, regardless if they're not being used. And I'll go to a high order function one here. And again, I hate the fact that we got to reload this to pull a screenshot. So yeah, so if you can see over here along the bottom, I went up to the page 6. And each of these pages has what the 16 functions. This is what happens if you have no functions. The CS2 always displays the blank sort of holders for all these features.
The default buttons.
Yeah, and what I'll do is, and you can kind of compare this if I go to the CS3 screen. Let me get this in. Let me get this viewable by me. This will only sort of display elements that you've added into the system. So you don't have to sort of hunt each of these pages on the CS2 like you do on the CS2. You don't have to hunt for where all your elements are, where your articles are, because they'll
as efficient as the CS3 is, I do kind of like those pages on the CS2. I do kind of miss that for the CS3.
I mean, it kind of comes in handy if you're looking for a blank spot to put things in.
Yeah, for one, yeah. I mean, I just like seeing, I don't know, maybe it's the way we set them up. I usually had all my turnouts on, 1 or 2 pages, and then all my signals on, 1 or 2 pages. And I don't know, I guess I got used to it. I don't know.
Well, the thing is, all right, so let me, I'm going to manipulate the CS3 a little bit and put in a more updated file here. I'll do a restore here. You don't really have to see me doing this. Let me just kind of load one up. Yeah, load that one up. Or I'll show it really quick here. So basically, and this is sort of the benefit on even the CS2 or CS3, whenever you have different operating or system or layout plans, you just kind of create a different profile that you can load up from. And the thing is, to what Rick is kind of saying, is that you still have an article list once you populate it. It's just that unlike the CS2, it's not going to show any unpopulated areas. So, I mean, you still kind of have a full display screen, which I don't know if that kind of alleviates, what Rick was saying. But, um, the CS2 has so many of these blank pages that you may never actually use. So again, you look at these, and we're talking about, you're talking about, at least this is one page. It's 16 per 8 pages. It goes up to 16, let's see, 24, 32 pages, 40 pages. And I'm doing this on the screen that I'm looking at. So yeah, there's like 56 pages. And if you've got 16 articles on each, that's a lot of empty space that you're not really using or don't need to scroll through. And the other,
896,
yeah,
according to my math in my
yeah.
head.
Okay, so yeah, so you can multiply 196 pages. That's these numbers on the bottom, and you multiply that by 16. That's a lot of articles that you don't really need. Plus, the other thing that that when Marklin was using, or when Marklin came out with the MFX sort of turnout decoders and signal lights, because we were still kind of getting used to the MFX addressing, there would actually be random placements of where these articles would be. Because if, let's say, you didn't correctly preset like the dip switch setting on one of these devices, in other words, pre-addressing these things, and you allowed the system, let's say it was a duplicate address of something already in the system, well, the central stations would re-index that and give it sort of a different new address, and it wouldn't really necessarily tell you what that address was. And we would assume it would take the next empty space. Well, that wasn't really the case. Sometimes it would literally go to some address up on those higher order pages, and unless you knew it was there, you'd have to look for it. So this was sort of the early days of the MFX stuff, and
It became an Easter egg hunt. I mean,
you,
you'd have to go and find it if you didn't pay attention to everything you did and made one little mistake. Yeah, you wouldn't know where it went.
yeah, so luckily we know a little bit more about how that all works. So it gets a little bit, now we can say, okay, try looking up all these pages to see if you find an icon of something that's working. And it would be even more worse if it didn't change the icon and you just had the generic icon, and then you had no idea it was working until you pressed it. So and what I mean is, reload this. You would literally have pages of this, and you wouldn't know if it assigned anything if it came up with a generic icon. You literally would have to click on each of these to figure out if it activated something. So there's a little bit of frustration there. And again, it was sort of backward compatibility with the CS2, since a lot of the features are programmed into the CS3's architecture. So let's kind of go to the next section here. And this is just kind of covered in the article. Reload the pages. So now we're looking at the layout setup here, and this is just sort of a tip and trick for a lot of users. When you have your track plan laid out, this is obviously the CS2 control boards. We don't have the sort of newer flow. We don't have the option as we do now on the CS3, which you have this screen. So you don't have this free-flowing layouts. You can still do control boards. I don't think I have any loaded up on this particular CS3 to show you, but it will mimic what you see on the CS2 if you choose that sort of style. We just did the track plans this way.
Your tunnel portals are backwards.
Well, I guess they could be. Depends on your perspective. Maybe I want to see what the end of the tunnel looks like.
Is your depot inside a tunnel?
You know what? I'm not
Is
going to
your
let you
bridge
nitpick
inside a
that.
tunnel?
You know what? If you just go ahead and do that yourself.
You don't get that problem on a CS2.
Yeah. So, anyways, enough clowning around there because I'm sure there's going to be more to it. All right, so one of the features that I do want to talk about on the CS2 is that when you have multiple layouts, I really do miss the fact that we can't show these screens live. And also, there's for you folks who have the CS2 and you've used this. When Rick and I were talking about this earlier, if you have the main station app on your CS or you're like an iPad or an iPhone, if you have the mobile app, hang on to those because make sure I guess it's backed up on your system somewhere because it's not available through the App Store. We can't find those, and so I'm a little bit cursed there because I have an iPad Pro that doesn't have the software on it, and my iPad 2's battery's dead, and I can't download the app anymore. So just kind of be aware if you have the main station app or the mobile app. Count your blessings. Keep that online because that's one way to access and control your screen. So anyways, the point getting back to what I'm displaying here on the display is when you have multiple routing like this, or you have multiple pages, excuse me, there's a tendency for sort of users to want to put the entire track plan on one page. You can, minimize effort. It's hard to go from one of these layout pages to the next by using the list. So the shortcut that's sort of described in the newsletter is you go into the edit mode, and let me click that in there. Screenshot, taking a lot of screenshots. Okay, so on the upper left here is basically, it allows you to create links, and you see right here in the layout, I have two links that are basically pointing to, and if I click on that, and let me just, I will click on it and show you the screen. So I'm going to click on it and click on the grid, sort of creating a new one. And it's going to give me a pop-up window. And that pop-up window looks like this. And you can click on this list and it will display the list of all the layout plans that you have. And you just need to select one of these. And what it does is it will give you such a pain in the butt to do. It gives you a direct link from one line to the next. So it's just reloading here. So these two links here that I'm pointing at actually collect. It just takes this part of the line and connects and goes right to this trackboard page. So I have it listed as Bonoff 2, and I will display Bonoff 2. And it will go, excuse me. It will go to this, and this is my Bonhoff 2, the hidden staging yard and whatnot. And then I create reverse links that go back to wherever this line connects to. So that's a little bit of a shortcut for you, for at least folks who haven't fully developed in their central station 2. Because believe it or not, we have folks who have had their central station 2 and really haven't worked with it a whole lot, and now they're kind of getting into it. So there's a little tip for the layout. Let's kind of dive into the memory section here. So get out of that. So the memory section is basically now termed in CS3 terms as events. And so there's a bit of a crossover because in the in the days where you had the white square boxes with the black faces, those were actually, there was a memory module, which basically allowed you to program a sequence of events. And that kind of carried over into the CS2. And, we call them memory routes, right? I believe that's what we termed them. And then since the CS3, we've now called them events, which are basically you're programming a sequence of events to get triggered by something on the track. So that's so there's a bit of a crossover history regarding programming events. Now in the CS, what one feature, and we're just kind of glossing over those who are really not familiar with the CS2 or anything like that. One feature that is available in the CS2 that really isn't available in the CS3 is that when you want to automate a row of events, you can do that in sort of groups of 8, and that's with this icon here on the right. So at the top we have a hand icon, and that basically tells me that all these memory events are manually triggered. In other words, I have to use whatever mouse click or finger click to activate these events. The the icon below that with the locomotive means this can be triggered by track events or train events. And so essentially this whole row can be activated to be automatic. But so the kind of caveat here is that while you can disable all these events, you might not have 8 events that you want to disable at once. Or, let's say you wanted to only disconnect 3 of those. Well, that means that you really don't want to add events in the other 3. And so that way, when you disable something, you can just disable just those 3 only. So you'd kind of have to plan ahead where you want to put events. And like the keyboard section, we have paged events, and you can see it's A through D, and that's these rows here, A through D, E through H, so on and so forth. And then we go into lowercase settings. So, Y through B is basically covering, capital Y, capital Z, and lowercase b and A. So there you have that. Now, one more change is when you go into edit mode, and let me just kind of get something set up here before I refresh the page. When you actually go into edit mode and you click on one of these icons, it will actually display the listing of events here. And maybe that was a poor example, so because it only has one event in it. Get rid of that. Let's see if I have something a little bit more complex here. Yeah, this one on it. Nope. Well, that one's interesting. So I'm talking to myself, aren't I?
Well, you generally do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this will be interesting to show, anyways. And I'll refresh this page. Hopefully, come on, it shows. Okay, so this here and there's with the CS2 on the lower left under the name, we had very limited characters. Which has changed since the CS3, because I can let me just kind of open up events here. Whoops. So I'm kind of doing stuff, and I've actually kind of carried it over to some degree into the CS3. So you only have limited characters, so I had to sort of develop some kind of coding so I understood what was going on when I needed to reference these events. And the first number here is basically which contact am I working with, and it was either going to be, now I'm using either an A or D. That means whether the train is arriving onto that contact or departing that contact, which if you look at the name, this coincides with the trigger type, and that trigger type is right here with the locomotive. And you can see that the icon depicts the train leaving that contact track. So it's a 52 departure. Okay. And and I actually have what I call a conditional, which I'll explain in a second here. And that means that this in order for this to activate, there's a condition based on whether or not contact 18 is on or showing occupancy. So I had to use some kind of shorthand code work to understand what was going on in this event. And I'll talk about what the event actually is in a second here. But let me kind of show you the comparison of the CS3 really quick here. So on the CS3, you can see that, if I need it, and this wasn't probably the best example that I had, is that I still kind of carry over this departure arrival kind of nomenclature. But you also have more text that you can in here, and you can see here it says, there's a pre-stage issue. So this kind of helps me understand more fully what that contact is doing. And I have sort of a pre-stage contact, and I will show you really quickly where that is applied on the CS3. So so over here, that's contact 1, and it's red because it's not applied to any track, so don't worry about this color here. But this K1 is a pre-stage, and what it does is the purpose of this in my CS3 is it allows me to determine and read all these other contacts to find out which one of these is unoccupied, so that I can actually redivert in a train into an empty line on my staging yard. So it's a pre-stage event. That's just technical stuff that's kind of beyond the point of what I was referring to, in which case the event, you have more text that you can actually decipher what it is. I don't really have any conditions the way that we did on the CS3. And let's see if I can pull one up here so I can explain the conditions that I'm referring to. So we'll go to edit event. Let's see, let's pull this up. No, I don't have one there. Don't have one there. Oh, there's probably one here. Okay. Over here in this event script, so this horizontal line is the equivalent to what we're doing on the vertical line on the CS2. Rick, I forget how we can, there's got to be a way how we can start sharing multiple screens. I just forget how it works. So on the CS2, we have our event steps here vertically along the line, along the right hand, or sometimes it'll be on the left, I think, and I just can't remember. It depends on what we open up. But the way conditions work is, and it's just easier to explain on the CS3. When you have an event that's going through, you see this question mark here on the screen there. It basically asks if, in this case, is contact 15 occupied? Is there a train sitting on that contact? And if the way we word it in programming, if this is true, then we can continue on with the rest of these steps. Okay, so if this contact is not occupied, then it's just going to ignore the rest of these events. So there's one thing that we can kind of look at condition wise, is this is what we call a conditional. Now in the CS, and this is basically generated by being able to pull contacts into it. And you can actually have conditions that relate to turnouts. In other words, if there was a question mark on this turnout icon, then it would just say, is the turnout showing as curved? And then you can sort of do what we do. If it's curved, then we can go on to the next steps. If not, then it's just to ignore these steps. And that's what we call sort of, there's other conditions that you can program in the CS3 that I'm not going to get into right now because it is a complex issue. But in the CS2, let's go into that. It's really kind of more difficult because you really don't have these sort of pre-programmed macros that you can do. Instead, what happens if we click on the EXT button here on the lower right, it will pull up this display. It pulls up this display. So this top line here, it's under the trigger. This trigger exactly wouldn't match what you put in the previous window. So this module contact 4 is essentially contact 52, and you can see right above it module 4 contact 4, and that's what that relates to. It also shows that my trigger type is a departure trigger. Now the conditions we set have to be added manually, and in this case, if they were blank on this third line down here, that means it's not evaluating any contact. But if you have something where you can select it and add the number as you do this module below, module 2 contact 2 will just basically say, is this occupied by a locomotive? If it was unoccupied, you'd just see the underline here and you wouldn't see a locomotive on it, and that's a condition. So these conditions basically are sort of preset, and they will only affect what's going on in the entire stream on the right side of your event. Okay, so it's unlike the CS3. Let's go back to the screen so you guys can see what I'm referring to. It doesn't give me an intermediate conditional. So you can see right here, I can literally go through these first 4 steps of my event, and then I can have a condition to continue on the rest of the event. We cannot place in the CS2 a conditional halfway through my event stream. It just can't do it. You'd have to literally kind of create a different event to do this. So there's complexity involved when doing fancy or advanced events in the CS2. It's just going to be, it's very difficult to do some of the things that either not available to you or that we can do in the CS3. So there's that's kind of a quick rundown on that. I could go on forever. There's just too much to go over, and I think I will probably end this part of the presentation. Is there any other pages? Yeah, no, not the setup control. Yeah, so there's a quick rundown of what was covered in the article. There is, just some of the things that you can do that are available that maybe you weren't aware of in the CS2, and this is kind of where they all are. If you guys really kind of want to research this more, you will probably want to look at the articles that that I was writing at the beginning of our our tenure with Marklin, which was in 2015 when we started. I essentially covered a lot of these programming events in the first year and a half, which was 2015 and then 2016. And then, later on when we go back and we start talking about MFX, those were sort of later on. But send us an email if you want. If you have questions like that, we can point you to either the index, which kind of lists the articles that we have, or even the webinars that we talked about, some of that stuff. So anyways, hopefully you guys got something out of that, and I kind of will hand it over. Let's see. We do have a question. Given the differences in the memory and handling the conditionals, I assume that upgrading from the CS2 to CS3 is difficult, if not impossible. That's a really good question. Considering the CS3 was released to us in, what was that, 2016?
Well, I think the answer to his question is, I think it might be okay as far as the conditions if he's not in advanced mode in a CS3.
Yeah, exactly. If you didn't do sort of any of these conditionals, basically what I was trying to say is, I can't remember how difficult it was, whether or not there was translations. There were initially real translation issues, like the layouts couldn't translate over. You had to it would come out like if you had a nice layout plan in your CS2 and then you brought it into the CS3, well, it just looks like you took a ball of yarn and just threw it on the floor, and then you'd have to kind of pull things apart to straighten it out. As far as the events go, yeah, you know what, Rick? I don't think the events translated very well, because of the nature, I think, of how contracts and modules got listed in your CS2 as opposed to the CS3. So that was an issue. And this is one thing that we kind of covered was back then, or even now to some degree, I literally had to write out a spreadsheet of what each event does. Do you have a spreadsheet of what the kind of stuff that you worked on?
I do somewhere. Let me look.
Yeah, so basically what it does, we went contact by contact. I wrote down whether it was an arrival, departure. I wrote down what was in my conditional list. And that really made it easier for me to port that thing into the CS3 because I think there was some degree of difficulty uh, of the CS2 memory events actually loading into the CS3 event scripts. It's just sort of this different architecture that I recall. So yeah, it was difficult. Having the handwritten notes really kind of saved me. So yeah,
Oh
if
yeah,
you remember, if you have a copy of that, that would be
yeah, I
great.
do. It's starting up right now. I need to restart my computer, and it takes forever, so I didn't. But
Yeah.
once it comes up, I'll share it. But it is really handy to write out a manual for your routing scripting um, in some way, shape, or form that you can just read it and you know what's going on. It will really help it, and have it printed out, because when you're sitting there in front of your, whether it's your CS2 or CS3, and you're trying to figure out what this stuff is, it's really easy to see it on a screen rather than seeing it on a page rather than seeing it on the screen. So we really recommend writing out a manual.
Yeah, mine was all handwritten, so which is why I can't really show you something because that's when I started out figuring out how to do that. Okay, yeah, there you go.
And these are basically memory scripts for a friend's layout that I did the programming for in his CS2. And it basically shows his Schattenbahnhof entry and the scripting to stop, to choose an empty line, um, and release the next line. And if everything is occupied, then it will run around the Schattenbahnhof if the whole thing is occupied. So this is just for a 8-line, well, technically 7-line and a bypass Schattenbahnhof in his layout. So
Yeah, and one reason why this was so important to the CS2, because frankly, when I started to do these events in my CS3, it was more understandable to what I was doing. In the CS2, you've got everything is buried in that ext file or the conditions folder. And the problem is that whenever you looked at a script, you'd have to open up that sub window just to see which one it was targeting, and that's where the list comes in handy because then you know which each one of those is he's got it under this exceptions list. It's addressing module 1 contact 1. It needs to look to see if it's identified. It made it a lot easier to sort of surf your surface in the CS3 and then identify where your contacts were and what they were addressing. The CS2, um, it was great that we could do all this stuff, but in order to track it all, it was so brutally hard to do because you had to open up windows after windows just to see what it was doing. And that's why this legend that Rick has written up comes in so handy for CS2 users. So
and so just real quick, obviously I can run through this. This is module 1 contact 1. I don't know why I put that there anymore. It should be at least module 1. And then the memory script on the left is the position in his CS2. Let's take Y1 on line 7. It's contact 10, contact 1, whether it's to check contact 1 whether it's occupied. And so it's basically polling into the Schattenbahnhof, is line 1 occupied? And if it is occupied, then turnout 1 goes green, and it goes into line, or it goes into look at line 2. If contact 2 is occupied, then turnout 2 goes green and it looks for line 3. if line 3 is like all the way down until it finds you get down to Z1 where it finds an unoccupied line. And once it finds an unoccupied line, it turns the turnout to that line, which is red, and the train goes into the unoccupied line and then hits module 1, contact 1 at the end of it so that it knows whether it's occupied or not. And that's basically the script to find an unoccupied line in a Schattenbahnhof. If there's more than one unoccupied line, obviously the train is going to turn on to the turnout that it hits first that's unoccupied. So the second unoccupied line will still be unoccupied. So that's a brief scatterbrained definition of that.
So there you go. All right. So yeah, if you guys have any other questions on it, go ahead and ask that. Otherwise, Rick, you want to cover your topic there?
My topic. Let me get back to the newsletter. This was
yeah, you basically covered your locomotive motor upgrades.
I gotta get to that screen. Here we go, share screen. The gentleman sent me his two 18.4s to work on. I highlighted the brown one because I'm tired of the green one. So these are were always difficult to upgrade. You could put a permanent magnet motor in there and use the original 3-pole armature, or you could use the 60906 986 decoder and use the original 3-pole motor with the AC field coil. But I really didn't like either of those options because they both utilize a 3-pole armature, and I just don't like the runnability of the 3-pole armatures. Plus, I always have difficult tuning them in the modern decoder for a 3-pole armature. So me being, the hack that I am, I have been through this a couple of times trying to make this 5-pole motor fit. And it just doesn't work. I've heard of people grinding down inside the boiler, but you can punch through it and then you ruin your boiler, your whole body. I have removed plates in this magnet and thinned out the magnet somewhat. I've removed material in the frame to make the large magnet fit better, and none of that stuff really worked out. It was just a nightmare. And in one of my previous articles, I had highlighted this motor as like a kind of an unknown motor. You'll see it here in figure 2. It's basically a brush plate where the brushes are upside down. Here you see the brushes, all the electronics and contacts and springs for the brushes are on top of the brush plate, where on this secondary brush plate, it's only for, I believe, class 01 locomotives that they made in the 60s and some of the Premix in the 70s. So it's kind of cool that Marklin made a motor for it, but it's not actually in a box. It comes in a parts bag. So people don't really know about it. And the brush plate is basically turned upside down. The only problem with this is obviously the wheel kind of rubs it, and there's no screw hole up at the top. So you can see the original screw hole below the brush plate off to the upper left, and it just didn't seem to fit right. So obviously I needed to drill a hole, and that's all I did. Is I found the center where the armature liked to sit with the screw down in the lower right-hand corner here to hold it in place, pivot the brush plate until it was in a spot that it liked, which isn't hard to do. It really is close because the magnet is pinned and the brush plate is pinned to the magnet. So there's very little movement that you could do on there. I didn't drill a pilot hole. I just used a drill that fit through the hole snug and made a little spot for it. That's where I drilled. I scribed a line where the wheel was to make clearance for that. I recommend using at least a drill press for this, and not something that you can grab the chuck and wiggle. It has to be a nice tight chuck, so you're drilling exactly where you want to drill.
What'd you do to keep that square?
Eyeball,
Okay.
literally just eyeball. I eyeballed it square and level and in my milling machine, and you can see I have an aluminum plate on the top because it's softer than the zinc. There's also a plate on the bottom. I don't think I show it in any of these pictures, but you really have to be careful of, I don't have a good representation. On one of these wheels on the other side, there's a ring gear all the way around it. And you don't want to crush that ring gear with one of these plates. I didn't highlight that in the article because I figured, if you're going to be clamping your locomotive into a clamp, you're going to really kind of be careful where you clamp it. So once I tap the hole, everything's fine. All I have to do is I just cut a straight diagonal around that arc of the wheel that I scribed. I opened up inside the shoulder of the brush plate, not this outer part. And I did that by hand. I turned it by hand. I didn't do it with a drill because it would grab it and pull it all the way through, which I didn't want to do. I just needed to open up actually the outside where this outer shoulder is. I don't want to make this inside any bigger. So you probably can't just file this whole ring off because that's part of the support. So all I did was open it up with a larger drill bit that was big enough for the screw head, which you'll see here, just big enough for that screw head to get inside.
So this locomotive really didn't have a mounting plate then for an upgrade.
No, the correct mounting plate is the one the gentleman used in the beginning here. This is actually the correct mounting plate. Okay. If you can see this here, that's the correct mounting plate. It's a 60944. 60944 motor. That's the correct magnet. That's the correct mounting plate, and it screws right into the original hole. But the problem is all of this stuff is on top of the armature where you need it on the bottom because there's no room. It hits the body. And once these contacts ground to the body, it'll either run at full speed and not have any control, or you'll burn out the decoder.
Is this specific to sort of the older 18.4s or all 18.4s?
Yes. 3011 and 3089, I believe.
Those are the blue boxes?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this was actually the condition that I got this locomotive in. The guy had the decoder taped in. He had the wires going here, and he just couldn't get it to work right. He couldn't get the body to fit because it doesn't. So I took it and did all this work to it. It doesn't take much work. You need a 2.5 millimeter tap. You need a number 46 drill bit. I believe it is. 32 to find the center. A 32 is the same size as the brush plate. That puts your little dot here. Then
you had to find mounting screws too, right?
They're just a standard motor mounting screw.
Okay. They weren't deeper than the other ones?
No. Okay. It's number 46 drill bit to drill the hole, and then a 2.5 millimeter tap to tap the threads. It's honestly the only thing that you have to do is drill a hole in the right place and tap the threads.
Yeah.
And it works. It sounds so simple, and it is. I mean, I kind of went into a little detail here, and you want to make sure things are square and stuff. Now, a little bit of modification. You widen the shoulder of the brush plate, like I mentioned earlier, cut a diagonal in the brush plate where it doesn't matter because that's where the wheel sits. And you'll see on the left here, this is the original brush plate and the screw is inside, and you just need to round it off somewhat to this arc. And all I did was take it to my small bench grinder and give it a little bit of a round. You know, I took it out of the locomotive, gave it a little bit of a round contour
You
on the
rounded
brush
it
plate.
off.
The screw is a little bit more difficult because obviously it's metal, but that's why I specifically chose a screw where the slot is in it diagonally or perpendicular, because you don't want it straight across, because you're going to be filing down really close to that edge if it's perfectly horizontal. And once you get it tight and snug, that's your index. I just took a Sharpie and marked off where I needed to grind it down and gave it an arc. And then it just kind of fits nice and snug, like up in here.
Yeah, go down to those lower photos again. So I'm just kind of wanted to point out this particular motor plate, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, just beyond the screw here, and obviously you can't see what I'm pointing at, but there's a little bit of a plastic flange that extends
Into,
beyond the plate.
yeah, to take up a little bit of extra
Yeah,
space.
a lot of motor plates don't have that, and these do. So just kind of be
Yeah.
aware of those.
Exactly. And so that you can see it on this side too a little bit. In fact, you might be able to see it. I guess I don't show it really well.
It's kind of, I didn't know. I didn't see it earlier, but I can kind of
sort of
see
see it down here on the bottom.
Yeah.
So that's why you don't want to just cut this whole shoulder off, because you need the support. You just need the screw to fit inside it, and that's all that does, because otherwise it would be nothing. I did give this a curve where I don't think I actually have to, but just to be safe, I did just a slight little tickle. And right here is the pivot point. If you don't file down that screw, that's the pivot point where it hits the body. The screw hits the body with this brush plate. And so that's why you have to give it the contour up here to clear that.
Better to file down the screw than to file inside the body.
Yes, yes. You can see here there's plenty of room. Obviously, this brown electronic piece eventually gets moved and bent up. But for now, because I put wires underneath it, I didn't want to flex it a lot. I just left it down. And you can see there's tons of room when you do this. So here's a finished piece ready for a decoder. So after all that work, now I start putting in a decoder. One thing that this gentleman wanted was a sound decoder where a speaker will barely fit in here if you're careful. But seems how I had it mounted in my milling machine anyway, I just took out this whole square. I just machined this whole thing off, which allows me to place the speaker nice and neatly inside the boiler, the Marklin speaker.
And just so you folks know that if you purchase a sound decoder from Marklin, the sound motor kits, they actually, I believe they still come with two speakers.
Yes, they do.
This is a smaller one of the two. There's a slightly larger one.
Yeah. Now, the reason I chose this speaker and put it in the locomotive rather than the tender is because this tender just hooks on because it's older. There's no lights in the tender. So without modifying the peg that the tender loops onto and putting a C-clip in there or something like that, because I don't have a lathe, if I put everything in the locomotive boiler, I have no wires going to the tender. It can still be disconnected and stored in the original box. I don't think they store in the original box connected to the locomotive. And so this is a nice, neat, clean installation. It can take a smoke generator, the decoder, the mounting board, and the speaker and the new motor all fit within the boiler in this configuration.
And the other thing I do want to point out is that Marklin does have two types of decoders, so the 8 pins or 21 pins, and you can see, or at least I'm assuming, that you were able to actually fit in the 21 pin adapter board with the 21 pin decoder.
Yes.
So that's a nice job.
Yeah, with this speaker, it allows a little bit of room to run wires right along the top. So you'll see I have one choke here and one choke down here at the bottom. So I didn't have to find a place for them. If I really wanted to, I was looking at it, I could move this speaker over and probably get both chokes right in here if I wanted to, but I didn't really feel the need for that. And that was basically it. It was, you know, start to finish, just something that I had done once before, and I wanted to write an article about it, but I was afraid it was a little too advanced. But then I realized, you know, all you need is a drill press, and you can do that.
Is that it? Is that all we need?
Yeah, because the obviously the tapping the threads is by hand anyway. So
Yeah. Cool. Very cool. All right. Let's see. Do we have any questions? No questions yet. Well, so I think we do have something that maybe we should comment on. And I don't remember the locomotive numbers, but there is, and we are aware, and Marklin is aware of an issue regarding some of the newer smoke units that are available. And I think Rick, you've got a good handle on explaining that one. I'm throwing that one.
yeah, that's fine. It was specifically the 844 and the 39027, the 02, I believe it is.
Yeah, wasn't there was a diesel locomotive that had a smoke unit in it too. Right?
Yeah, last year there was a diesel. I haven't heard of any problems with those.
Yeah.
Is
that in that's in this one, the 39482, right? Isn't it? I forget.
No.
That's on it. Okay.
No. Yeah, 39027.
Yeah, why don't we talk about that?
Just came out. Anyway, they have the dynamic smoke, which is wonderful. It smokes, you know, believe it or not, it smokes like a train.
Yeah, it's got this. So if you guys don't really know what that is, it basically has sort of I guess we call it the pulsing output, as you would see on a normal steam engine or anything.
Yeah, they call it dynamic smoke. So it will blow smoke like crazy, which looks great. The problem that we found, and I'm discussing it with the factory, and we haven't come to any conclusions yet. It's not a manufacturing problem. There's really no problem with the unit at all. The only thing is that it seems like, and I'm not positive on this, you can quote me, but I'm not sure. It seems like if you run out of smoke fluid in it, like, you know, normally with a regular smoke generator, you want to run the smoke out before you store it back in its box, because you don't want it dripping all over the locomotive, all over the box, all over whatever. The problem with that is if you run these out of smoke fluid, I think, at least this is what I think has happened, is the heating element then is not immersed in the fluid and not burning it, and it basically can, I'm not saying it will, I'm saying it can burn up, you know, basically rendering the smoke generator useless. So when it starts to, so to say, blow less smoke out, it's done. You can put it away, because there are fiberglass wicks inside the smoke generator reservoir that, you know, the fluid isn't going to come dripping out. So it is safe at that point to put it away when it starts to slow down and blowing the smoke. Don't run it for very long after that. Don't run it 2 or 3 times to get all the fluid out, because you could possibly damage your smoke generator. Just a little warning there. So that's what I've done in mine. I haven't damaged it, but I have run it till it started to slow down in the smoke output, and then just put it away, and it seems fine. So there's a heads up there.
Yeah, and you know, the factory is aware of it, and there is sort of and I'm going to paraphrase this a little bit. They are working on a software update for the decoder to avoid the sort of they're going to modify, I think, the high level of power that goes into the smoke unit, which also assisted in burning that out. So just it's a heads up for you guys to be aware of. The smoke unit, like Rick says, it works great. They're fun to watch. You just have to, at this point, have to be a little bit more careful on, you know, running it over too long, or running it
dry. Basically, yeah. You don't want to run it dry.
Yeah.
Somewhere I can show you if I can get it up real quick.
What are you looking for?
I have pictures of the smoke unit
Oh,
working.
yeah. Excuse me, I'm gonna be back in a sec.
And I just have to send this over to my computer real quick, and then I can show you this 844. It's smoking like crazy, and it's a really nice locomotive. Same with the 02. Let me share my screen now. There we go. There's the 844, and that's just it sitting. Well, actually, that was when it was running, and it chuffs both
I think
smokestacks chuff.
is that why it had two reservoirs, you think? Because that one actually had two reservoirs.
Well, it doesn't have really two reservoirs. It has a divider in between the two with a wick going underneath the divider to
Yeah, but that
equalize.
divider, you think that just separates the two smokestacks? Because I didn't really look at mine. Did you also turn off your smoke detector in the house?
Oh my God, I had to close the door and open the window so my wife wouldn't get, ask me what's going on. But on this particular model, the 844, if you look underneath the whistle, if you have it, there is a hole. And we had one user say that he thought that was for filling the reservoir, where no, it's not. You can fill the reservoir either one in either smokestack. It goes to the same reservoir, which is two reservoirs that are linked together. What I believe that is believe it or not, when you have the smoke generator going, or at least if you have the whistle going long enough, I believe you get steam out right underneath the whistle to make it look like the whistle is blowing the steam.
Oh, is that right? Well, that's cool.
Yeah, because inside this smoke generator, there are two motors and two fans. And the smokestacks that are running in this picture are being driven off of one fan, I believe. So I think the other fan is for the whistle, but I haven't taken mine out of the box again to check it.
I do want to
could very well be a possibility.
put that picture back up. I do want to point something out here, and I don't know if I can have screen control. Let's see if I can do it.
What, the mess on my table?
No, look at the bottom of the screen, guys. Do not put your screwdrivers across your tracks like that.
I did that so that I could run the chuffs on the wheels. I just lifted the drive wheels up so that I could get a good picture of the chuffs.
Yeah.
Because you'll notice right by the smokestacks, right here, that's another puff coming out.
Yeah.
This up here is the previous puff, and the streams are actually in between chuffs. So yeah,
that dynamic smoke unit is awesome. I have mine. I haven't really put smoke in it, but we did run it at the show in Amherst this last
yes, for probably actually pretty much all day.
Yeah, that was fun to watch. So look for those. It's great that they're putting out the dynamic smoke on it, because definitely makes it more lifelike. So
and open a window.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. Do we have anything?
Any questions?
Back of my mind means
844.
I knew there was something in the back of my mind that was relative to the LGB users. We currently are dealing we do get some questions with LGB users, mostly that they're getting locomotives that they're using third-party controllers and their functions are not mapped properly. In other words, F1 function 1 isn't at F1 on the third-party controller. So those definitely, I think we're starting to look at the decoders themselves for those LGB trains. They do need to be remapped. Unfortunately, we don't have all answers, especially when it comes to how do you remap a function on a third-party controller. So just kind of let you guys be aware of that if there are any LGB users out there.
Yeah, sometimes it's just a configuration of the button, making it from a momentary to a constant on off, which is within the controller. And yeah, we don't play with any other controllers than Marklin
Yeah.
products. So
Yeah, we're biased. I don't know why, but we're biased. Okay. Well, listen, you guys have any questions?
it doesn't even have to be about what we talked about. Any problems?
Yeah, if you have anything that you'd like to have answered, feel free to type that in the chat or raise your hand, and we can let you guys speak at us. Nothing? Okay. Are we going to Denver? I think I just saw something about.
Yeah, Rocky Mountain Train Show, the 2nd in April, first and let's see, 2nd and 3rd.
I haven't been there in a while. I mean, just for some reason, either I can't remember if we just didn't go to this show or you went there and I went somewhere else.
I went, and it's not the Denver Mart anymore. I hear they tore down the Denver Mart. They just put new carpet in like 3 or 4 years ago and new lights, and now they tore it all down.
They tore down the Denver Mart.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I believe at least one of us is going there. I'm just not too sure whether or not it's both of us. So yeah, you'll have to come visit if we do get out there. Anything else, guys? Any questions?
Apparently we
Okay.
answered them
All right. Well, let's see. That was. Can you guys get parts that are not listed on exploded diagrams? Yeah. For LGB parts or any of those parts, we're just like you. We'd have to contact the factory or whatnot, and we don't really sell parts directly. So if you have the part number or have something like that, the best folks to go to is going to be a dealer, so that they can kind of send any kind of information to the distributor to find out. So unless do you have any other answer to that one, Rick?
Usually parts that aren't on the exploded view, I would say that you contact your dealer, and they have to contact the factory. They would come from the service department, and the service department doesn't always sell parts. I usually, if I need a part, I usually take a screenshot of the exploded view and circle the part I need and point an arrow to it. And I don't know whether, I can't say whether I always get the part or not. The factory's not always the greatest in communicating what they're doing. So sometimes I get a part, sometimes I don't. But that's because usually when I request a part like that, I'm doing a warranty repair. And so I can usually get the part for a warranty repair, but if it's not a warranty repair, I'm kind of out of luck also.
Okay, so let's see, we got a couple of questions. I think this one came in first. Any shows out west comparable to the Amherst show? We really don't have any West Coast shows that are as big as Amherst, especially that we attend. The
only show would be Eurowest.
Yeah, and we don't really know the status of that just based on the COVID issue that we have.
So far, it's still on, from what I hear.
Okay.
For this year, and that's the San Francisco chapter of ETE, European Train Enthusiast, that put on a swap meet and show and modules from Southern California and Oregon. Pacific Northwest chapter come down, and it's just a big swap meet for Marklin. Not so much.
Well, let's just kind of say it is focused highly on European trains. So, you wouldn't really come out here to find US trains. And like Rick said, we got Oregon, Southern California come up to the Bay Area here in San Francisco. And so it's probably the biggest show we got from Marklin users.
Because it's basically all European products. It's not a huge show, but there's usually 50, 60 tables and about 20 to 25 vendors.
Yeah, pretty much.
Just selling trains and stuff. So it is a great show. It's just not big.
Okay. Okay, we got okay, so we want the other question we have, is there any way to copy an event, especially one with many turnouts and track sensors? The answer directly is no, you really can't copy an event. However, there is sort of ways around that, and that does require that you sort of plan out your events and know which each event is doing. And what that means is you're actually going to be nesting events. And let me kind of show you what that means. So let me share my screen here really quickly here. So, and this isn't going to be an exact solution, at least as far as what I'm demoing, because I'm not going to go through my event scripts and figure out what each one does. But essentially what you would be doing is, let's say let's pick this one out here. Okay, let's say, well, it's sort of a bad example. Let's see if I have one that's got multiple events in it, which is harder to find. Let's check my grouping. Let's try the staging here and see if that does it. Okay, one of these, come on. All right, let's say this was it, and I had like multiple turnouts here. What you can do is, if you have just a strict, like a manual event, and maybe I can create one here. So let's close that. And I'll just do this and I can throw it away later. So basically I'm going to pull in all these events, and let's say you want this sequence to do it. Well, what you're going to do is you just kind of create, and I'll just give it, see if I can do this and it saves. Let's just call it a base script here. Okay. What you can do is that if you ever have need of that sort of repeated functionality, and it's right here. You see, if I open this up, I have a base script here. What I can do is I can easily just add it into another event. So I'm going to take this base script and I'm going to put it right in there. So you're nesting a routing event within another event. So, and this is why I say you have to kind of plan ahead. Okay. You just don't create your events based on one feature. Look at your events that you want to do and see if they can be applied. Can a section of that be applied elsewhere? In which case, then you can generate a separate event and nest these events. Now, bear in mind, you have to kind of keep track of your timing, because let's say this base event might take 10 seconds to do, right? If I had another event after that, like this turnout, let's see. Let me just kind of close this up here. Let's say I had, another event over here that follows this, right? And this event takes like 10 seconds to accomplish. Well, the thing is, once it hits, it's going to trigger that event, and it's going to run concurrently immediately this event afterwards. But if you want this to happen after the base event, then you have to put in a delay. You got to time this thing out. So like a 10-second delay, for instance, it's going to run this. And it's going to run this, and then 10 seconds later, then it will activate this next script, because this delay occurs after this gets triggered. So there's just ways around it, and you just had to understand that you can nest events, but you have to be careful how you nest them, and you got to be aware of what you've nested. Otherwise, you're going to have a stream of events that are going to trigger, and you might not understand why. So again, this is sort of what we talked about earlier. When we track and log all your events, you want to know what each trigger is doing and what's occurring. Okay, so there's a question. That's the answer there. We do have a question on YouTube. He wants to know, what are the capabilities of a booster? Does it give more strength to a circuit? Technically, what a booster does is it reinforces the digital code that is your instruction code to all elements around your layout. And what happens is if you only have one sort of power supply around the layout and you got a large layout, you do have all your elements on the track have the potential for sort of degrading that digital code signal, because it's sort of like, it's like getting a shock from static. You're creating a little bit of a spike in something, and that spike is enough that can affect a digital code output. And whether or not it's like a joint between tracks, or it's a circuit going in through a locomotive, you're generating a little bit of noise, and it's minute. It might be, it's not literally negligible, but it exists. So the thing is, eventually you need to reinforce that digital code, and that's what boosters do. It's not about reinforcing power, because frankly you'll have plenty of power to operate things, but when you get to that stage where something starts to sort of fail when you communicate, like why is my signal not switching, or why is my turnout not changing? Well, that's most likely going to be a digital code control issue rather than an actual output issue. So that's the basis of why you want boosters when you start seeing stuff like that. He states, I'm having certain difficulties with locomotive. Well, I don't know what those difficulties are. It could be that control issue. You might actually have a problem with the locomotive itself. Whether or not, it's we've had locomotives that had too much oil that dripped on between the slider plate that prevented it from being operable. And just cleaning that out fixed it. So I can't really answer directly to what the issue is, but now you kind of know what a booster does. So those are the online questions there on YouTube. Hopefully you can sort that out. I don't really think it's whether or not it's an issue with the locomotive, I can't say. So all right. Any other questions? Did you see anything else, Rick?
No.
Okay.
John, just thank you. He never thought of that nesting events.
Yeah, it's there's stuff that you gotta pick up when you program things. So, all right. Anything else? Okay. Well, unless there's anything else, I think that pretty much does it for us. Let's see. How are you supposed to clean the Loco? Rick, I'll let you answer that one.
Carefully.
You're good at cleaning. He's done an article on cleaning a locomotive.
Yeah, I did. What did I do an article on maintenance service?
Yeah.
I know I did.
At least you did a webinar, I think, because
did a
didn't you have the
video
overhead
of it
camera?
for ETE.
Did you ever post that?
No, it's on the ETE website though, under the webinars that they were doing. When I service a locomotive, I take the motor completely apart. Depending on how bad it is, I will clean it with electrical contact cleaner that's plastic safe. Clean out the gears, and as Curtis mentioned earlier, underneath the sliders where a lot of oil always collects. And people have a tendency to over oil their trains. And when I put it back together, I only put oil in exactly where I need it, not like over the whole gear, just right on the pinion of the gear. And it's just a very little bit. I actually started putting some grease on the armature so that oil would run down a lot, when people oil the armature. So I put a little grease on the armature bearings, and that seems to be working out well, just a tiny bit. Yeah, but everything else pretty much gets oil. I've had locomotives where they are oiled, but I don't know what oil somebody is using or was using. But believe it or not, it doesn't conduct electricity. It was a grounding problem, and I've literally had to take wheels and axles out of the locomotive to clean it and put regular oil in there so that it will conduct electricity, because it was a grounding issue. So it can get pretty deep. Sometimes it's the slider contacts, where the spring, the slider face actually hooks into the springs. Sometimes those go bad and you get a bad contact there. So
Yeah, I think what I would do is, in this sense, going over cleaning a locomotive is going to be probably too extensive at this point in the webinar. But I think I thought we had an article on it. We'll probably definitely cover one now that we sort of have questions on it. I do use, so as far as electrical parts cleaner, and it's not a product thing. I go to an automotive parts place, and they do have sort of these spray cans. They kind of look like the applicators that we use in WD-40. It's electrical parts cleaner. Make sure you get plastic safe, because they have one that's just metal. And usually on the surface, like Rick says, the best way to clean it is to take the motor part. You can spray this on it, put it over a paper towel, spray this in it, and it's just going to help loosen up and liquefy some of the grit and grease that's in there, and it's going to help drain out. Sometimes if you have like you might have a motor that's seized up. If I get lazy, for instance, I'll just kind of spray this around on the motor, again putting the chassis on a paper towel and just spraying this and letting it drip and drain out till I get it loosened up. And then maybe at that point I might take it apart again, or take it apart. But if you just kind of roughly, if it's not that bad or anything like that, I'll spray this in it and just let whatever's in there drain out, and then I'll just kind of oil it up. But again, these are at auto parts stores, electrical parts cleaner, plastic safe. Make sure it's plastic safe. So,
and I would be very cautious in trying to turn the wheels of a locomotive, because there are a lot that have worm gears now, through cardan shafts and a can motor, and you could damage something in there, a gear or something. On a steam locomotive, if you turn the wrong side, you could get it out of quarter, which can be challenging to get back into quarter if you don't know what you're doing. And some of the older locomotives from, let's say the 70s, there's some of them actually have a plastic gear up inside, where if the armature is seized and you try and turn the wheels, you're going to break the teeth off that gear. So I would advise not turning the wheels with your fingers.
yeah, don't force the wheels to turn, because that, it'll do what Rick was saying. It's just kind of not the greatest idea.
So,
especially if you're not sure what motor's in there.
yeah, or what gears are in there.
Yeah, or what gears. So, and if you take it apart once, then you kind of know, but always kind of be careful at that point. All right. There was a question of what kind of grease. I don't really know. I don't really use grease on mine, but Rick does.
No, I have some grease that I picked up over in Germany. And I've been working my way through it. And unfortunately, this is probably going to be a gear flan. And it's in German, but it's called gear flan. And I figured I'd try it, see how well it worked. And it seems to be working out okay. If a locomotive has a reservoir with the little sponge in it, I'll use some of this, but I'll still oil the sponge or put a new sponge in and oil it, just so it always has a little bit of oil. But the gear flan seems to be working out okay. I probably wouldn't use it in Z gauge. It's basically a gear grease, and it's plastic safe.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, I think that pretty much will do it for us.
Yeah, unless there's any more questions, comments, any stories.
Oh,
nothing.
All right. Okay. Well, listen, guys, it was great to having your questions. It was great. Thanks for visiting and listening to us ramble on. We will probably see you, if probably not any sooner, in a couple months. Again, we're going every other month on the webinars right now. Send in questions. Anything you have to know or want to know that gives us some ideas to write about. And, obviously we're here to help you folks out. All right. So from until then, you guys enjoy your hobby. Have fun with everything. Be safe. All right.
All right. So
Take care, guys. We'll
yeah.
talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.